The first sign came just before dawn. A farmer in a small village of northern Canada was the first to notice. He was checking his livestock when the early morning sky lit up not with the gentle glow of sunrise, but with bright streaks of fire cutting across the darkness. They moved too fast, too many, and far too straight to be meteors. He stood there, his breath freezing in the cold air, watching as the fiery lines slowed down. That was when fear took hold. Meteors never slowed down, thousands of miles away. In the deserts of Australia, a truck driver stopped in the middle of the highway. The horizon looked like it was burning. At first, he thought it might be a bushfire until the burning shapes began to split apart, breaking into massive black silhouettes. They moved with purpose, gliding over the clouds as if hunting for something in every country. At the same time, people saw it. Bright trails tearing the sky open, huge shadows falling toward the earth. Airports shut down, flights were grounded. Military bases sounded alarms. The world's governments began calling emergency meetings. Something was coming, and it was coming everywhere in Washington. The president's security team rushed him into the Situation Room. Dozens of screens filled the walls, showing live feeds from around the planet. The shapes were enormous, dark and alien. They blocked out the stars as they descended. "They're slowing down," a general said, his voice shaking despite decades of service. "They're entering controlled descent. This isn't debris. This is an invasion." In Moscow, in London, in Beijing, in every major capital, the same truth spread like a virus. The objects were ships larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls shimmered with strange blue light. They ignored commercial air traffic. They ignored radio warnings. And they were not here to talk. The first wave struck military installations. In Nevada, a U.S. airbase erupted in flames as one of the black ships hovered above, firing thin beams of white energy that cut through steel and concrete like paper. In Russia, a missile silo vanished in a flash of light. In France, communication towers collapsed under precise, targeted blasts. They were not destroying cities, not yet. They were cutting off Earth's defenses. They moved like predators, circling their prey, waiting for it to weaken before going for the kill. For ordinary people, the first hours were chaos. Power went out in entire regions. The internet became unstable. News anchors tried to stay calm, reading whatever official statements they were given. But the fear in their eyes told the real story. In a small apartment in Tokyo, a young woman named Hannah clutched her phone as she recorded the sight from her balcony. The alien ship was so close, she could see strange symbols glowing faintly on its hull. Her hands trembled as she whispered to the camera, "They're watching us." Moments later, a deep vibration shook the air, rattling her windows. She dropped the phone and screamed. In Nairobi, a father held his children close as a ship passed silently overhead. It blotted out the moon, turning the night into an unnatural darkness. No sound of engines, no roar of thrusters. Only silence, like a predator stalking in the wild. By the time the sun rose over Europe, the enemy had made itself known. Every television, every radio, every public screen switched at once to a single transmission. The picture was strange three. Tall figures in armor that seemed alive, glowing faintly as if lit from within. Their faces were hidden by smooth silver masks. The one in the center spoke first. The voice was cold, distorted and calm. "People of Earth, you will surrender your leaders, your weapons, and your resources. Failure to comply will mean the end of your species. No demands for peace, no promises of mercy, only an order." The broadcast ended without warning, replaced by static. In the Situation Room, silence hung heavy. Some leaders argued that surrender might save lives. Others demanded immediate counterattack. But the truth was clear to everyone in the room. Humanity had never faced anything like this. The enemy was far more advanced, far more precise, and they already had the advantage. But beneath the fear, in the hidden places where cameras could not see, preparations began. Deep underground, in long-forgotten bunkers, old plans were pulled from dusty archives. In locked hangars, engineers and soldiers moved in silence, readying machines that had been hidden for decades. In the mountains of South America, A small military unit stood in a cavern lit by dim red lights. Their commander, a grizzled veteran named Colonel Ramirez, stared at a massive steel door sealed with rusted chains. Behind it was something even his soldiers had never seen. "Sir," one of them asked, "what's in there?" Ramirez's voice was low, almost a whisper. "The reason they'll regret coming here?" Above, the alien ships continued their slow, deliberate movements. In the sky, they looked untouchable. To them, this was the beginning of an easy conquest. Humanity, they believed, was weak, soft prey that would break in days. They had no idea that Earth had been preparing for a war like this long before their first ship appeared. Somewhere, far away from any city, a deep, echoing sound rumbled through the Earth. It was the sound of something massive waking up, and for the first time since the invasion began, the hunters in the sky might have felt a flicker of unease. The alien ships did not leave. They hung in the skies over the world's major cities like dark clouds, silent and unmoving. Their presence alone was enough to freeze entire populations in fear. Streets were empty, schools were closed, airports turned into military zones. Everyone waited for the next move. It came in the afternoon. Every screen, every device, every signal on Earth was hijacked again. The same three masked figures appeared. This time, the camera view was closer. Their armor pulsed with strange light, as if it was alive. The one in the center leaned forward. "We are the Krail Dominion," the voice said, slow and deliberate. "Your world is now under our control. Your leaders will surrender themselves to us within one planetary rotation. You will deliver your weapons, resources, and transport fleets to our landing sites. If you refuse, you will erase your species from existence." There was no shouting, no arrogance in the tone only, the calm certainty of someone who believed. The outcome was already decided. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying a weak animal before killing it. Then the screen went black. In the Situation Room, the President of the United States turned to his generals. "Do we have a response?" General Porter shook his head. "We can't match their technology, sir. Not yet. If we strike now, we lose everything. If we wait, we might have a chance." In Beijing, the Chinese premier slammed his fist on the table during his own crisis meeting. "They want our surrender. They believe they can scare us into giving up without a fight. They think we are like the worlds they conquered before. We are not." Across the planet, similar arguments unfolded. Some leaders pushed for surrender to save their people. Others swore to fight, no matter the cost. The problem was, simple humanity had no idea how to win against an enemy like this. And yet, in the shadows, something was happening. Beneath the streets of London, in a deep military bunker, a woman named Commander Alina Drake walked along a dim corridor. She carried a black case, locked with multiple codes. Inside was something older than she was, something that had been hidden since before she was born. She reached a heavy blast door, scanned her handprint, stepped inside. The room beyond was filled with old holographic maps, dusty consoles, and a massive table with a star chart etched into its surface. Around it stood 10 men and women soldiers, engineers and scientists from different countries. They did not salute her. They did not speak. They simply waited. Drake placed the black case on the table and opened it. Inside was a small metal cube, dull and unmarked, except for one thing, a faint hum, like the sound of a heartbeat. "It's time," she said. In the mountains of South America, Colonel Ramirez received a similar signal. He and his men began cutting through the rusted chains on the great steel door. Behind it, dust and shadows stirred. In the deserts of Nevada, a long-forgotten hangar came alive. Lights flickered on for the first time in decades. Rows of machines, sleek, deadly, and unlike anything in modern armies, stood waiting. The aliens had no idea these places existed, but the Krail Dominion was not waiting quietly either. On the outskirts of cities, alien landing craft touched down. Armored soldiers, taller and stronger than humans, began setting up strange towers. Each one emitted a low, deep hum that made the ground tremble. Some kind of suppression field. Any human who came close felt dizzy and weak. as if their energy was being drained. In Paris, a group of French commandos tried to approach one of the towers. They were spotted. A single alien soldier moved faster than any human I could follow. In seconds, the entire team was dead. The bodies were left where they fell and unspoken. Warning to anyone watching, the message was clear. Resistance was hopeless. But the Krail had made one mistake. They believed humanity's strength was in its armies, its fleets, and its visible power. They did not understand that Earth's greatest weapon was its people, scattered, stubborn, and impossible to control. In a small fishing village in Norway, locals gathered in a boathouse. They had no military training, no advanced weapons, but they had radios, maps, and the will to fight. Similar groups formed all over the world. Farmers, mechanics, students, veterans, ordinary people preparing to become soldiers. By nightfall, the alien warlords believed the humans were doing nothing. Their ships floated calmly in the skies. Their soldiers stood guard over captured bases. They prepared for the next day, when the Earth would finally bow to their demands. But far below the surface, in hidden tunnels and sealed chambers, humanity's answer was almost ready. In the frozen silence of Antarctica, a buried facility stirred. Giant steel clamps released, ice cracked and shattered. Beneath the glacier, a shape began to rise, long, dark, and armored, its surface covered in strange plating. Its engines had not burned for over 50 years, but when they did, the sound shook the ice for miles. The Krail Dominion believed they had seen all that Earth could offer. Tomorrow, they would learn how wrong they were. The night was unnaturally quiet. In the cities, people stayed indoors, lights off, afraid of drawing attention from the alien ships that still hovered above. They looked like dark mountains in the sky, unmoving yet menacing, their faint blue lights casting ghostly shadows over empty streets. For almost 24 hours since the ultimatum, Earth had been silent. No public speeches, no surrender, no obvious resistance. The Krail Dominion mistook this for fear. In their command ship, an enormous fortress of black steel hanging above the Pacific, the alien warlords spoke to each other in their cold, mechanical language. They believed humanity had accepted defeat and that the next sunrise would bring total submission. They were wrong. At 3:17 UTC, the silence was broken. A coded transmission was sent through old military channels no one had used in decades. It traveled across continents, under oceans. Through satellites the aliens thought were abandoned. Operation Emberfall. Execute. In the Nevada desert. Camouflaged hangar doors slid open, revealing sleek black aircraft hidden for generations. Their design was old, but their weapons had been updated in secret. Pilots climbed in without speaking. Engines came alive, rumbling like distant thunder. In the forests of Eastern Europe, mobile artillery units rolled out of hidden bunkers. Their barrels were painted in strange patterned symbols from wars long past, the kind no alien would recognize, in the mountains of South America. Colonel Ramirez finally stepped through the great steel door his men had cut open the night before. Behind it was a chamber carved into the rock, filled with weapons unlike anything in the world's current armies. They were older, heavier, built for a war that never came until now, at exactly 3:30. All across the planet, Earth struck back. The first attack came in Africa. An alien tower in the Kenyan savannah, surrounded by Krail soldiers, exploded in a burst of fire. It was destroyed not by missiles, but by a group of local fighters using weapons the aliens had ignored, short-range rocket launchers hidden in trucks. The blast tore through the suppression field, and human forces rushed in to finish the job. In Europe, 3 alien patrol ships were caught off guard. Old fighter jets, fast and agile, swarmed them from below the clouds. The aliens underestimated them. They thought human weapons could not pierce their shields. They were wrong. Modified missiles designed in secret labs for decades punched through the Krail defenses, tearing the ships apart in blinding explosions. But the real blow came from the ocean's front, from deep beneath the waves. A submarine, older than most of its crew, launched a single missile. It did not fly toward an alien tower. It climbed high, then split apart, releasing dozens of smaller warheads. Each one struck an alien landing craft, destroying them before their troops could reinforce the cities. On the alien command ship, alarms screamed. The warlords watched in shock as their perfect invasion began to unravel. Fleets had never faced such unpredictable attacks. The humans were not fighting in open battle. They were striking from the shadows, disappearing before the Krail could respond in the skies above South America. The first human warship from the Antarctic facility rose into the clouds. It was smaller than a Krail cruiser, but faster and deadlier. Its hull was coated in a strange, non-reflective material. Alien targeting systems could barely lock onto it. It climbed into orbit, engines burning bright, and went straight for a Krail supply ship. Alien vessel tried to flee, but the human ship's main cannon fired once, just once, and split it in half. On the ground, word of the strike spread quickly. People who had been hiding now whispered to each other with hope in their voices. The invaders could be hurt. The invaders could bleed. But the victory was not without cost. In Paris, a squad of resistance fighters managed to destroy a Krail energy hub, but none of them made it out alive. In the Pacific, 2 human submarines were lost after alien ships hunted them with deep-sea weapons. Still, for the first time since the invasion began, the Krail Dominion knew fear. Inside their command ship, the central warlord slammed a clawed hand against the table. They hide. They strike. They vanish. This is not war, it is pest control. Burn them out. The order was sent. Across the skies, Krail ships began moving aggressively, scanning for hidden bases, targeting any sign of movement. Entire forests were burned. Mountainsides were blasted open. Cities already damaged were reduced to rubble, but the humans had no intention of stopping in the Nevada desert. Commander Drake stood beside one of the black aircraft as it prepared for another run. She knew they could not defeat the aliens in a single night. This was only the beginning, test to see how the Krail reacted as she climbed into the cockpit. Her radio crackled with a message from Ramirez in South America. First blood is ours. Let's keep it that way. Above them, the stars glittered coldly. But now they were joined by the orange glow of burning alien ships. The first strike had begun, and it would not be the last. The days after the first strike were unlike anything the Krail Dominion had experienced before. They were used to enemies who fought in open fields, who surrendered when their armies were crushed. They had faced great fleets, powerful weapons, and vast civilizations and destroyed them all. But Earth was different. Every day, alien patrols vanished without explanation. Towers they had built to control human cities were destroyed overnight. Supply convoys never reached their destinations. And worst of all, they could not find the ones responsible. In the jungles of South America, Krail soldiers marched in tight formation, scanning every shadow. Their armor was thick, their weapons deadly, but their movements were slow in the dense trees. Above them, unseen, a small drone built from human scrap parts hovered quietly. Sending live images to a hidden base miles away, Colonel Ramirez watched the feed. "They're right where we want them," he said, and gave the order. Explosions erupted from both sides of the trail. Smoke filled the air. The Krail soldiers fired wildly into the trees, but there was no one there. Hidden tripwires set off more charges, and the jungle swallowed the invaders in fire and dust. By the time the smoke cleared, the attackers were gone, vanished into the shadows. In Eastern Europe, an alien outpost built in the ruins of a city came under sudden attack. But it wasn't tanks or fighter jets. It was civilians, miners, and students using stolen alien rifles and homemade bombs. They struck, grabbed what they could, and disappeared into the sewers before reinforcements arrived. The Krail were furious. They increased patrols. They brought in larger ships to watch the skies. They even deployed tracking drones across the continents. But still, the attacks came, fast, precise, and from nowhere. Commander Elena Drake understood why. The Krail were trying to fight a war of control. Humanity was fighting a war of survival. Every street, every forest, every mountain was home. To someone willing to resist, in the deserts of North Africa, A Krail convoy rolled through open sand. Ahead, the road seemed clear. But when the lead vehicle passed a small sand dune, the ground exploded. Hidden beneath the desert, human fighters had dug a tunnel and planted explosives directly under the path. By the time the Krail regrouped, the attackers were already gone, swallowed by the desert heat. The aliens began to fear the dark. In the streets of occupied cities, Krail soldiers avoided narrow alleys. They refused to patrol at night without heavy escorts. They knew that shadows could hide death, and often did. One night in Nairobi, a squad of Krail soldiers entered a dark street, their glowing armor casting faint blue light. The leader ordered a scan. The scanners showed nothing. They relaxed. That was when the first arrow hit. A steel-tipped shaft fired from a rooftop pierced the neck joint of a soldier's armor. He fell before anyone could react. More arrows followed, along with bursts of gunfire from hidden windows. The Krail fired back, destroying buildings. But the attackers were already gone. It wasn't just soldiers and guerrillas now. Even civilians who had never held a weapon were finding ways to fight sabotaging alien machinery, cutting fuel lines, and spreading false information through the invaders' communication systems. The Krail Dominion's high command grew desperate. In their massive orbital fortress, the three warlords studied maps of Earth. Every time they marked a human resistance zone, it vanished from one place, only to reappear somewhere else. "This is chaos," one of them snarled. "They are everywhere and nowhere." The central warlord, silent until now, finally spoke. "Then we burn everything they can hide in." Orders went out. Cities were bombed from above. Forests set ablaze. Rivers poisoned. The Krail hoped that destroying the land would destroy the humans, but they had underestimated their prey again. In the Canadian wilderness, survivors moved through the burning forests, carrying supplies to hidden bases. In the Australian outback, fighters used the alien firestorms as cover to move between locations. The more destruction the Krail caused, the more unpredictable the humans became. In one of Earth's deep mountain tunnels, Commander Drake stood, before a map glowing with hundreds of small red dots alien patrol routes. She looked at Ramirez, who had just arrived from South America. "They're spreading themselves too thin," Drake said. "If we keep hitting and running their lines, we'll collapse." Ramirez smiled grimly, "And let's cut them apart piece by piece." Far above, in the Krail command ship, the warlords stared at their reports in disbelief. The humans were not breaking. They were adapting faster than any enemy the Krail had ever faced. The shadows of Earth were closing in. And soon, the invaders would learn that they were the prey now. The Krail Dominion believed they had seen the extent of Earth's defenses. Old fighter jets, modified missiles, hidden guerrilla cells. Annoying. Yes, but nothing that could challenge their fleets in space. That belief would not survive the week. Far beneath the ice of Antarctica, in a cavern carved from the bedrock, the air rumbled with the sound of awakening machines. For decades, the facility had been silent, its purpose known only to a handful of people scattered across different nations. Its walls were lined with frozen steel giants' warships, built during a time when humanity feared an enemy that never came, until now, massive. Doors, each thicker than a battleship's armor, began to open. Ice cracked and fell into the freezing water as hydraulic systems roared to life. One by one, the ships powered up, their engines glowing a deep, angry red. These vessels were not as large as the Krail cruisers, but they were faster, sharper, and designed for one thing only: killing. Commander Alina Drake stood on the control platform, her breath misting in the cold air. She had been told about the fleet years ago, but seeing it was different. Each hull was painted a dull black, absorbing the light. There were no decorative markings, no national flags-only weapons. Beside her, an older man in a heavy coat spoke. Without looking away from the ships, they were built for a war against each other. But now they'll fight for all of us. Drake nodded. "Let's see if the Krail bleed in space." The launch began at midnight. Massive elevators carried the ships up through the ice, emerging into the frozen Antarctic night. Steam poured from their vents as they rose above the glaciers. One after another, they roared into the sky, engines shaking the earth. From orbit, the Krail picked up the launches. At first, they assumed it was another desperate human attempt fighters, perhaps, or more missiles. But when the fleet broke, through the atmosphere, moving in perfect formation, the alien sensors screamed warnings. The forgotten fleet had come to life. The first engagement happened above the South Atlantic. A Krail Patrol Group 3 cruisers and a carrier moved in to intercept. They were confident. These new human ships were smaller, lighter, easy targets, but the moment they closed the distance, the humans struck first. The lead warship, Vanguard, fired a salvo of railgun rounds. Traveling at incredible speed, projectiles tore through the first cruiser's shields as if they weren't there, ripping the alien ship in half. Before the debris could settle, 2 more human ships flanked the second cruiser, launching swarms of micro-missiles that exploded against its engines. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. All 3 Krail cruisers were destroyed. The carrier fled damaged and limping toward the main fleet. For the first time since the invasion began, the war in space had turned. News of the victory spread quickly through resistance channels on Earth. Grainy footage from satellites showed alien ships burning in orbit. Across cities and villages, people cheered. The Krail's image of unstoppable power had been cracked. But the warlords in the Krail command ship did not cheer, they argued. They are not supposed to have ships like this, one hissed. No species this young should. The central warlord stared at the battle recordings in silence. Finally he spoke. Then destroy them before they multiply. Orders went out. Dozens of Krail warships began moving toward the South Atlantic. The plan was simple: overwhelm the human fleet with sheer numbers. But the forgotten fleet was not waiting to be found. In the darkness of space, the humans launched their next move. Using old stealth technology, combined with new modifications, the fleet split into smaller hunting groups. Each one targeted Krail supply lines, ambushing transport ships and fuel carriers. The attacks were fast, brutal, and always followed by silence. One Krail captain described it in his last transmission before his ship vanished. They strike from nowhere, like predators in the void. The reports with grim satisfaction. Now they know what it feels like, he told his men. Now they know we can reach them anywhere. In orbit, the Krail began pulling their ships back toward their main fortress above the Pacific. It was a defensive move, a sign they were no longer confident. Commander Drake saw the pattern on her tactical map and smiled. They're retreating to protect their command ship, she said. Good, that means they're scared. But the humans knew the Krail would not stay defensive for long. The next battles would be bigger, bloodier, and fought at every level on the ground, in the air, and in the cold darkness above the world. The forgotten fleet had given humanity a chance. Now it was time to use it. Somewhere deep in space, hidden by Earth's shadow, the Vanguard's captain sent a single encrypted message to all resistance leaders. Phase 2 begins at dawn. And for the first time since the invasion began, the Krail Dominion prepared not for conquest, but for survival. The battle above Earth had turned into something far worse than anyone had expected. What began as a fight in orbit was now spilling into the skies, cities, and oceans. The alien fleet, though wounded, was desperate. They no longer cared about victory. They only wanted to destroy as much as possible before they were forced to flee. On the ground, entire cities were under attack. Dropships burned through the atmosphere, deploying strange walking machines and swarms of insect-like drones. Sirens screamed in every major settlement, while defense towers and fighter squadrons engaged the invaders in brutal, close-range combat. From the orbital command station, Admiral Reyes watched the chaos on dozens of screens. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard. They're going for civilian targets now, he said, almost to himself. They want to break us. Orders, sir? Tasked Captain Amani, standing beside him. Reyes did not answer immediately. He studied the data feed, his mind racing. Alien flagship was still holding position at high orbit, its massive guns tearing into any human ship that got too close. Taking it down would be the key to ending the battle, but it was shielded, and their heavy weapons were still recharging. On the ground in New Santiago, Commander Arya Vale led her unit through burning streets. The air was thick with smoke, and the roar of alien war machines echoed off the ruins. Her soldiers moved in tight formation, using collapsed buildings for cover. "Keep moving," she shouted over the noise. "We take out that walker before it reaches the evacuation point." The alien walker, a towering machine with 4 massive legs, was advancing slowly but unstoppably toward the city's main evacuation hub. If it reached the crowd of fleeing civilians, the casualties would be catastrophic, as Arya's squad set up anti-armor launchers. The walker's weapons lit up the night, sending streams of plasma into nearby buildings. Windows exploded, walls crumbled, and the ground shook with every step. Arya steadied her launcher and waited for the moment when the creature machine would expose its weak joint in orbit. The human fleet was struggling to hold the line. Frigates darted between enemy cruisers, launching torpedoes at point-blank range. Destroyers poured all their firepower into breaking the enemy's shields, even as their own hulls were torn apart. Then came a message from one of the deep space stations, unexpected, urgent. "Command, we've detected an energy spike on the alien flagship. It's charging something massive." Rhea's heart sank. He knew exactly what that meant. "Metakiller weapon," he muttered. "They're going to fire on the surface." There was no time for a calculated plan. He opened the fleet-wide channel. "All units forget defensive positions. Hit that flagship with everything we've got. If we go down, we take it with us." Arya's launcher fired at the exact moment. Her comm crackled with the Admiral's voice. "Ah!" The rocket streaked across the street, slamming into the walker's knee joint. The explosion ripped through armor plating, and the massive machine lurched sideways, collapsing into the rubble. Above her, streaks of light filled the sky as the human fleet made a desperate push toward the alien flagship. Ships exploded in blinding flashes, but others pressed forward. Weaving through enemy fire, the alien weapon continued charging, glowing brighter with each passing second. The Earth's surface below was bathed in a pale, deadly light. Then, just as the weapon's core reached its final stage, one human battleship broke through the enemy's screen, a battered but determined warship known as the Resolute. Its captain, bloodied but unbowed, pushed his vessel forward on full burn, with shields failing and engines screaming. The Resolute rammed straight into the alien flagship's forward section, tearing through armor and detonating its entire payload at point-blank range. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. The alien weapon's energy core destabilized. A chain reaction tore the flagship apart. From the command station, Reyes watched the fireball bloom in silence. There were no cheers, only the grim knowledge of what had been sacrificed. On the ground, Arya looked up through the smoke-filled sky and saw the pieces of the alien flagship burning as they fell toward the ocean. She knew the fight wasn't over, but something had shifted. Humanity had struck back, and the enemy had felt it. The wreckage of the alien flagship still burned in Earth's upper atmosphere, but the battle was far from over. Scattered alien cruisers regrouped into tight formations, their commanders furious and desperate. Across the comm network, Admiral Reyes heard intercepted transmissions in a harsh alien tongue orders for reinforcements. "Long-range scans confirm it," said Captain Amani. "They've sent a distress beacon into deep space. Massive fleet. Signatures incoming. Estimated arrival in 2 hours." Reyes didn't even blink. "They're not going to give us that long." Indeed, the surviving alien forces began a coordinated assault, targeting the fleet's wounded ships and striking deep into Earth's orbital defenses. Every station, every gun platform, every fighter wing was pushed to its limit down on the surface. Commander Arya Vale and her soldiers had barely caught their breath when the sky lit up again. Alien drop pods screamed through the clouds, hammering into the outskirts of New Santiago. Arya's come buzzed with a direct order from Planetary Command. "Commander, hold your sector at all costs. If those reinforcements arrive while the city is in chaos, we lose it." Arya's team moved like shadows through the ruined streets, cutting down enemy drones in brutal close-quarters combat. But there was something new among the enemy towering bioengineered warriors. 3 meters tall, their armor fused with living muscle, they moved faster than anything Arya had faced before. Meanwhile, in high orbit, Reyes knew they couldn't win a prolonged fight. The alien reinforcements would dwarf anything the human fleet could field. There was only one option left, an option he had sworn would remain buried. He turned to Imani. "Send the activation code." "All of them." Imani hesitated. "You're sure, sir?" the council ordered. "They're not here," Reyes snapped. "Send it." Far beyond Earth, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, massive forms began to stir. The Aegis Fleeta, secret armada of warships built in silence. Never acknowledged by any government, powered up for the first time in decades. Their hulls were black as void, bristling with weapons humanity had sworn never to use. One by one, they emerged from the darkness, engines flaring to life. AI cores woke from deep slumber, and crews who had been living in isolation for years prepared for war. Back in orbit, the alien cruisers suddenly hesitated. Long-range sensors picked up hundreds of new warp signatures. They weren't alien, they were human. The comms crackled with a cold, emotionless voice. "Aegis Fleet to Earth Command. We have returned." Reyes felt a grim smile tug at his lips. "Welcome back. Target the incoming reinforcements. Let's remind them why they fear us." Far out in the black, the first wave of alien reinforcements tore into real space and found themselves staring at a wall of human warships. Every one armed for planetary extermination, the void went silent for a heartbeat. Then the guns of the Aegis Fleet opened fire. The first barrage from the Aegis Fleet tore through the alien reinforcements like paper. Ships the size of cities were split apart in seconds, their glowing cores erupting into fireballs that lit the darkness. The alien commander tried to rally his forces, sending encrypted orders across the fleet, but it was useless. The black warships of humanity were faster, stronger, and merciless. On the surface of Earth, Commander Arya Vale watched the sky ignite. The alien biowarriors in the streets suddenly froze, their control signals lost. One by one, they collapsed. Where they stood, lifeless. Up in orbit, Admiral Reyes stood at the center of the command deck, calm in the chaos. The Aegis ships moved like predators in a feeding frenzy, warp-jumping short distances, striking from impossible angles, and vanishing before the enemy could react. "Sir," Captain Imani said quietly, "they're breaking. Whole sections of their fleet are retreating." Reyes' voice was steel. "Don't let them leave. No survivors." For the aliens, escape became impossible. The Aegis warships hunted them down relentlessly, cutting off hyperspace exits, dragging crippled vessels into the killing zone. In the alien flagship's final moments, their commander sent a last message across the galaxy, a warning to every allied species. Earth is not prey. Earth is the predator. The humans didn't let the transmission finish before a lance of white energy sliced the ship in half. By dawn, it was over. Not a single enemy ship remained in Earth's orbit. The debris field glittered in the morning sun, a silent reminder of what had happened here. On the command deck of the Resolute, Reyes stood watching the battlefield. Imani stepped beside him. "We've won, sir. Earth is safe." Reyes didn't smile. For now. But the galaxy heard this. They'll come again. Only next time, they'll bring more. In the shadows beyond the fleet, the Aegis warships drifted, silent and still. Their mission was complete for now. Deep inside his mind, Reyes knew the truth. The aliens hadn't just attacked Earth. They had woken something that could never be put back to sleep, and when war came again, humanity would be ready.